Hey guys, Troy Francis, welcome to my channel, The Dating Game with Troy Francis. Now today, we're going to get straight into it with a very important topic, which is why modern men need edge as far as dating is concerned. Okay, so you probably heard a lot about this idea about edge. You know, guys, they need to have an edge, they need to have something about them, they need to have some kind of an X factor. What does it actually mean and why is it so important? So that's what we're going to be breaking down in today's video with a bit of whiteboard action, as you can see here. Okay, so why do men need edge in dating? Well, the first thing is that modern women demand more than average. Okay, now a contentious point here immediately is what does average actually mean? And of course, you know, the reality is that the definition of average has got higher and higher and higher as time's gone on. Why has that happened? Well, because we live in this sort of modern dating environment whereby there's so much comparison, right? We've got Instagram. Women are all on Instagram. They're all on social media. They're looking at these dudes who are, you know, all over the world. Some of the richest, most ripped, most well put together guys on the planet. Some of these guys are slipping into their DMs. Okay, so they're looking at all of this content online, and they're recognizing, and the dating apps as well, and they're recognizing, okay, some of these guys are interested in me. Some of these guys are sliding into my DMs, and that has exponentially raised women's standards as far as men are concerned. So the first point is that what average means has actually changed over the years anyway. The bar has risen, but nevertheless, even so, even putting that to one side, women still require more than just average. So let's have a look at what the sort of the minimum threshold we're talking about here is. So the minimum really, and this is the kind of stuff that people will always talk about, right? So you look at other channels, you'll look at like doomer channels, black pill channels, all of that kind of thing. And this is the stuff that people are going to talk about, specifically looks, okay? So everyone always bangs on about looks, right? You've got to be good looking, you've got to be a Chad, you've got to be 7 foot, you've got to be, you know, chiseled abs, all that kind of stuff. So looks is the first thing. The second thing that people will talk about a lot is money, and what you often get, I'll get guys in the comments section and they'll be saying, okay, yeah, but you know, basically all you need is money, and then she's going to fall into bed with you. Okay, so that's number two. And then there's status, you know, some form of societal status, whether that means having a big social media following or it means actually having some genuine real world status. Maybe you're part of, you know, some well-known family, or you've got some celebrity or local celebrity or something like that. I've said these things are the minimum. I mean, look, there are varying degrees of how much of this you need, but these are the minimum things that you need to at least be cognizant of and you need to be working on, okay? So the reality is you don't need to be a male model, okay? You don't need to be 7'5" or whatever it is, but you do need to be working on this aspect of yourself, okay? You certainly need to be looks maxing, as they say, to the highest degree possible. So that is, you know, getting a decent haircut, getting in shape, style, grooming, looking after the skin, you know, all of that kind of stuff. We need to be covering that off for sure, okay? Money, again, you know, it's somewhat overplayed. You don't need to be a multimillionaire. You don't need to have a fleet of Lambos parked in the underground garage at your penthouse apartment and all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is, all things being equal, having some sort of financial resource, so at least you can, you know, show her a good time. You can do some fun things together. You can maybe go on some cool trips or whatever. That's definitely going to stand you in good stead. And then status is sort of like, well, another way of looking at status is, do you have some sort of social presence, right? Are you able to command the room in a social situation? Okay, so at the minimum, even if you're not famous, even if you don't have a big social media account, and you don't have to have those things, but as long as you look like the kind of person who has that sort of social command, that is also going to stand you in good stead. Okay, but again, really, all of these things, and people think, all right, and people will tell you on other channels that this stuff is all you need. There are whole channels dedicated to saying that all you need is looks, okay? And if you don't have looks, then you're screwed. No woman's ever going to touch you. But if you do have looks, then you don't need anything else, because then they're just going to choose you. They're going to fall into your lap. They're going to fall into bed with you, and you won't have to do any work whatsoever. Now, needless to say, that is absolute nonsense, because we work with guys. I've personally coached guys who are very good looking guys, decent looking, well put together, in shape. Maybe they do a combat sport. Maybe they've done Muay Thai for years, might be well dressed. They might even be quite social, but they're still not getting much traction in dating. And sometimes they're not getting any traction at all in dating. So even when you're covering off some of these basic things, and as I say, look, I mean, there are varying degrees of this stuff, okay? Even when you're covering off some of these basic things, a woman is going to look at, for sure, nobody's denying that. It doesn't mean that you are going to be getting optimal results in dating. Another example, by the way, is money. money, because then there are other people who say, well, it's all about money. You know, if you're rich, if you're loaded, then women are just going to fall into your lap and it's all going to be fine. Again, not the case. I've coached in the last couple of months very, very wealthy clients who have a lot of financial resources. They own property, they own expensive cars, expensive jewelry, watches, suits, all the rest of it. And once more, they're not getting the results that they want in dating. They're either getting zero results or the results they're getting are subpar. So once more, you know, money in itself, not really the thing that's going to get you over the line. Status, I would argue, out of all of that stuff, if you want to be kind of doomer about this and black pill about this, I would argue that status is probably the one thing that would do a lot of the heavy lifting for you if you have it. Okay, so if you are Leonardo DiCaprio, and Leo, if you're watching, thanks for tuning in and please subscribe to the channel. But you know, if you have that status in society, then yes, that probably will help you more than any of the other things. But the truth is that most people, and certainly probably most people who are coming to this content, and I include myself and most people I know, don't really have the sufficient status to really turn the dial using just that. Okay, so you might be able to walk into the room, you might be able to walk into the party and command attention and have people look at you, and that's great, but it's not really enough. You know, it's not like you're a rapper, it's not like you're Drake, it's, you know, whatever, right? So of all of them, I would say this is probably the most important, but the likelihood is you don't have it to a sufficient extent. Anyway, we need to be working on all of these things, okay? We need to be, as I say, looks maxing. We need to be trying to make sure that we're in a decent position financially, looking after your career, etc., having a purpose, all of that good stuff. And the status as well, you know, whatever you can do to increase that, absolutely sure. However, as I've said, there are people who have all of these things, or they have degrees of all of these things, and they're still not getting any action. So what is it that they need, and where are they going wrong? Well, as I said here, modern women demand more than average. They need emotion, okay? That is the important word here. We need to, the whole thing about dating, the whole thing about from the first approach to when you go on the date with her, you're sitting down with her in the bar, you're looking at her, you know, hopefully you guys, maybe you're sitting next to each other, or you're sitting at right angles, or even across the table, you're looking at her in the eye, maybe you're holding her hand, you're touching, there's that deep eye contact, there's that physical sort of presence, that intimacy that's created between the two of you. What you're doing, ideally, in that situation, is you are creating an emotional response in her, okay? And this links down to here, because what that means is it creates these emotional triggers, which kind of translate as tingles, all right? Basically, sexual arousal, okay? That is ultimately where we're going with this. That is ultimately what you need, because the thing is, all of this stuff, particularly the money, and somewhat arguably the status as well. Some of these things are nice to have, okay? Like, yes, on the one hand, she wants a guy who is able to command respect in society. She ultimately probably is looking for a provider figure. Ultimately, she probably does want to find a guy who's going to be able to give her a good lifestyle, who's kind of dependable, who's reliable, etc., etc. But in the short term, is that sexy? Not really, no. And that's why, because women have this dual mating strategy whereby, you know, she might sleep with the dude who is a pauper, who's sleeping on a mattress, who's a drug addict, or he's selling drugs, he's got no cash, whatever, because there's something about him, there's some visceral kind of sexual kind of excitement about him. And then in the end, she jettisons him and she gets together with the sensible accountant dude because he's going to give her a better life. But whether she's really happy with that guy and whether they stay together longer term is another question. So women have this kind of, it's difficult because they have these dual desires, if you like. There's the desire for sort of excitement and for the sexual side of things, and then there's the desire ultimately for the more stable, sensible side of things. But what we want to be doing at the beginning, if you're out there on the dating market, is you want to be creating the emotion. And this is where all of this comes in, okay? Edge. So you might know, if you followed me on other platforms, I've been a dating coach for over a decade now. A lot of the time I've worked with a colleague of mine, James Tusk, who is a famous day game expert. He's traveled the world. He's, you know, coached hundreds, probably thousands of guys by now. I've coached hundreds of guys as well. Between us, we've got over 25 years of experience, both of dating and of coaching and of really kind of studying this stuff and getting under the hood of this stuff. And what we've done is broken down this idea of edge into an acronym, okay? So that it's kind of easily digestible and easy to understand. And this is the stuff that you need to address over and above the regular stuff that the mainstream is going to tell you need, okay? Because the mainstream is going to tell you, go to the gym, okay, get big muscles, okay, buy a nice suit, get a Rolex, get a good car, have a good job, be a leader in your community. women respect that. The mainstream is going to tell you all of that. But the truth is that there are guys, as I said, who have all of that and they're still not getting laid. Okay. So the bits that you really need to achieve are down here. So we'll go through them one by one. And as I said, we've broken this into a useful, handy acronym. So it's kind of easy to remember and easy to understand. Go through it now. So EDGE. E, elite hormone optimization. Okay. D, dangerous man formula. G, godlike sexual magnetism. And E, emotional and social intelligence mastery. Okay, so let's explain them one by one. The first one, elite hormone optimization. So what we realized after a long time of trying to teach guys this stuff, what happens when you're a dating coach is you will get guys coming to you and saying, listen, Troy, I want to improve my dating life. I'm not getting girls aren't responding to me, or I'm not getting any matches, or I go out and approach and then the girls don't reject me, or if I do get a phone number, then she doesn't respond. And if she responds, I go on a date and then nothing comes of the date, etc., etc. So there are guys that we meet regularly who've gone through very long dry spells where there's really nothing happening as far as dating's concerned. Okay, so we'll go, okay, all right, I can help you. So the first thing you need to do is you need to overcome your approach anxiety, and you need to get out there, and you need to start talking to more women. It's pretty straightforward, right? Because obviously the more people you speak to, the more people you engage with, the more likely you are to make something happen, right? Straightforward. What will often happen is we'll do an initial call with the client. So, right, okay, so this week, all I want you to do is go and talk to 7 women, 10 women that you haven't met before. Just go up, say, hi, I'm Troy. Very nice to meet you. You look very cute. Wanted to say hello and have a bit of a conversation and see where it goes. Okay, so we'll set something very simple like that. And you would be amazed with the number of guys. We give them the exercises and we say, right, we'll follow up with you next week. You would be amazed with the number of guys that just don't do it. Okay, they just don't do the action. Or if they do the action, they'll do a bit. They'll say, well, I did 3, or I did 2.5, or I did 4, but 2 of them were women that I work with. So does that count, right? They won't do the whole thing, and then there'll always be some kind of excuse or some kind of reason. Not always, not in 100% of cases. There are guys who do commit and they actually do the necessary actions, and they're the ones who get the results. But a lot of guys, they just don't do the necessary thing. The necessary thing that's actually going to turn the dial is go and talk to more women, okay? Or, you could do a bit of online dating as well. So it might be swiping on a certain number of women or whatever. Happy to do that, but when it's actually about getting out into the field and talking to people, less so. So then we thought, why is it that these guys who say on the surface they want to have a better dating life, they're not doing the very basic fucking fundamental thing that might facilitate that happening? And then we start looking at all the studies which talk about how testosterone is falling and continues to fall in the West and has been falling over the last several decades. Okay, I think it's something like 1% fall a year now we're seeing. And if you compare dudes back in the 50s and the 60s to dudes now, you see this marked difference in terms of testosterone. And we started to think, well, maybe there's a correlation between these things, because in order to go out there and actually make things happen, in order to go out there and be social and take that risk and be vulnerable and put yourself out there and open yourself up potentially to rejection, you need to have a certain amount of oomph, right? You need to have a certain amount of ballsiness in you. And if your testosterone is low, or if other aspects of your hormonal makeup are not optimized, could it be something to do with that? And sure enough, we started to ask clients we were working with to get their testosterone tested. We started to ask them to get hormone tests. And in most cases, the clients that we were working with, certainly the ones over the age of 30, turned out that their testosterone was quite low, okay? Or there was some other hormonal thing that was kind of blocking them. And so then we started recommending to clients, not look, jump on TRT or start doing some kind of steroid stack or something like that. But it's certainly something to have a look at. And it's certainly something to talk to an expert about to figure out, okay, so is there something that I can do here in order to optimize where I'm at as far as my hormones are concerned? Because if your hormones are not firing on all cylinders, then with the best will in the world, you're just not going to have the oomph. You're just not going to have the grit and the determination and the motivation necessary to go out there and do stuff, to make it happen. You're just going to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to sit at home. I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to eat Cheetos, etc. Because the idea of going out and talking to girls seems very hard. And as human beings, we tend to prefer to take the path of least resistance. So, we'd rather not do the hard thing. We'd rather just do the easy thing. Okay. And that's why this is so important, this hormone optimization. Now, it might just be improving your sleep patterns. It might be changing up your diet. Okay. It could be those things. It could be some sort of testosterone replacement therapy, but obviously you need to do that under medical advice. You need to do that under supervision. And nobody's saying just jump into that with no thought. But it is very important to consider this, because the guys who are getting the best results, not just just in terms of dating, but just in terms of life generally, have this stuff dialed in, okay? And the other thing to say is that women can sense this, all right? So when I've been in a better state as far as the hormonal stuff's concerned, my energy is different. The way that I come across is different. The vibe that I'm presenting is different, okay? And women can sense that on you. So when you're sitting there on a date, you're exuding more of this kind of masculine energy, okay, that she appreciates. And that's going to work in your favor. If you're just sitting there like a bag of potatoes and you're kind of like slouching and there's no, there's no motivation, there's no get up and go, there's no vibe, it's no good. You're not presenting yourself in the best light. So that stuff, super, super key. And most dating coaches, I don't think anybody else on the internet really is talking about this, apart from myself and James. And, people are talking about this in terms of, sports and self-development, but they're not really talking about it in terms of dating. But it is such an important thing, it's such a key thing about having edge. And look, bringing it back to emotion, you might think, well, what's that got to do with emotion? Well, the reason it has to do with emotion is because, again, the way that you make her feel when she's in your presence is super, super key. And if you are exuding an optimized masculine presence, then she's going to feel that and she's going to respond to that on a visceral, emotional level. Okay? Now, dangerous man formula. This is kind of a rebrand, really, of the dark triad stuff. And I'm going to do another video about dark triad, which is that mixture between narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. So we'll go into that in more detail in a different video. But suffice to say that you don't want to be the nice guy, okay? I was just watching a video earlier I might react to with Robert Glover being interviewed by Psychax. Dr. Robert Glover, as you know, wrote the classic book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, Nice Guys Finish Last, etc., etc. What is the definition of edge? If you think about, right, this guy's got edge. What is the definition of that? It is somebody who has, there's something about them, okay? They are not predictable, all right? They are not just the average Joe. They're not just the average chump who's going to be supplicating, who's going to be super nice, who's going to be super agreeable, who's just going to go along with everything she says, okay? It's that dude who's got that extra something about him. He's got that glint in the eye. The example that we will always use, because it's a great example, is Daniel Craig as Bond. If you think about Daniel Craig as Bond, he has edge, okay? He has that masculine presence. It's not that he's a bad guy to the people that he is seeking to protect, okay? The missions that he does are missions ostensibly against evil, okay? So he's doing good things, but the manner in which he's accomplishing them and the manner in which he presents himself is very much in cooperation with that. And also with that, actually, as well, by the way. I mean, obviously, a fine specimen like Bond is somebody who is optimized in all ways, both physically as well as mentally, okay? But you want to have that dangerous, and I'm not talking about violence here or anything like that. I'm not talking about anything I'm not talking about anything antisocial in that sense. But you've got to have that sense about you that you are ready to take action, that you are not a pushover, you're not a walkover, you are somebody who stands their ground, you're somebody who has boundaries, both with her, but also with the rest of the world. And this is why we often hear all this talk about women testing men. Well, why do women test men? Well, they test men because, quite frankly, if you can't pass the tests that a 5'3" woman, who's probably much physically smaller than you, presents to you, then how are you going to pass the tests that the rest of the world is going to present to you, okay? She needs to know that you've got that grit about you. You've got that kind of spice, that kind of iron, all right? That fire in the eyes. And so, as I say, we're going to talk about the dark triad stuff in a different video, but it's really important to recognize so many studies, right? So many studies have shown that women are attracted to this slightly bad boy kind of archetype. We all know this. It's a cliche in the culture. I mean, women will talk about this. If you watch reality TV shows, women will often be like, oh yeah, I love the bad boys. I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. We all know this, okay? So the key thing is, right, in knowing this, how do we harness some of that energy in a socially acceptable way to make ourselves more attractive? Because look, if you're just being the nice guy, you're being the kind of, you're wearing the khaki slacks to work every day, the nice jumper your mum bought you, there's not really a lot going on, you're just a very agreeable sort of guy who just goes along with the status quo, then your parents may approve of you, your grandmother may think you're a very sweet boy, but you're not really going to be getting much action out there, particularly in today's world, okay? Particularly with the way things are now. Because, as I said, what women crave more than anything is emotion. And this absolutely creates emotion, okay? One of the number one things, in fact, that creates emotion. The next thing, the G from Edge, is godlike sexual magnetism. elitism. The thing with that is, and this is kind of a continuation from the last point in a way, you've got to be somebody who is prepared to own their sexuality and to project it, okay, in the right way. And once again, I'm thinking about the initial approach when you first meet her. You know, are you projecting as a guy who is sexually confident, who seems to know what he's doing, who appears to probably have been selected sexually by women before? Is that the way you're coming across? Or are you coming across as a bit of a chode who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, who probably hasn't been sexually selected before, and he's just hoping that he lucks out with this woman that you're approaching now? Because if it's the latter, then, I mean, women are like anybody else, right? They think it's like when you go to the restaurant, okay? There's one restaurant and all the tables are filled and there's a queue outside and you think, God, that place looks amazing. It must be fantastic, all right? And then there's the place next door and there's a couple of people sitting in there and the owner's just smoking and they're kind of looking miserably at each other and nothing's going on. Naturally, as human beings, we just think that the place that is popular is going to be better. Now, it could be that the second restaurant has better food. It could be that the food there's amazing and the first place is shit, but it's just been hyped up and so there's loads of customers. Okay, we don't know, but perception is reality. Okay, so what you want her to perceive when you're dealing with her is that you have this sexual aspect to you. Okay, and an important part of that is being capable of communicating sexuality. Now, I don't mean in a crude way necessarily, unless you're unless you're out on a stag do in in Magaluf or something like that. But for the most part, we're not talking about doing this in a crude way. We're talking about doing this in a kind of subtle, under the radar kind of way. But you want to appear to her to be somebody who knows what they're doing. And it comes down to a lot of very subtle things: eye contact, touch, little elements of touch, the way that you look at her, some of the things that you talk about. Okay, closeness, physical proximity. There's so many different things, body language, they all kind of come together. But ultimately, you want to look like the guy who knows what he's doing, who's done this before, is going to be able to lead this sexually in the right way. Okay, so she's going to feel comfortable. And also, she's not going to feel awkward, because that's the other thing, of course. Women don't want to feel awkward. She doesn't want to feel like she's got to be the one doing the running for the most part. Once again, obviously, the feeling of sexuality, or the feeling of, sexually being excited by somebody, that is also emotion, okay? So if you present as being this sexualized guy, that's an emotion that she's going to feel. And in dating, that's probably the best emotion that she can feel. I mean, to be honest, any emotion is better than none. So making her laugh is good. Making her angry can even be good. Okay, being challenging can be good. But if you had to pick one, then, making her feel the tingles, making her feel that sexual side of you, that's got to be up there, right? For obvious reasons, right? You want to walk into her life and you're this kind of mysterious stranger and, she can't quite figure you out, but you're obviously this sexual dude. There's obviously this kind of vibe about you. You've got that edge. You've got that kind of, there's something slightly challenging about you. You're not just somebody who follows the herd. You're not just a sheep. And you've got this sexual side. All of that stuff is catnip, okay? This is what you need to be developing. And then the fourth one, so the final E, is emotional and social intelligence mastery. Now, really, that's what you would call the game side of things, okay? So that is understanding her, all right? That is understanding female psychology. It's understanding yourself and how intergender dynamics should go down. And you can learn that stuff by watching channels like this, because what I do here is give you some of the theory behind this stuff. So you can learn this stuff. There's a lot of resources on the internet, as you probably know, to teach you about this stuff. However, of course, really taking action, going out there in the field is the only way to actually learn it properly. But there's a lot of information you can learn about this stuff nevertheless. So you need to understand her emotions and you need to understand your emotions. And you also need to understand what's going on around you as well. And this, I would say, is, we did a show the other day where we were talking about guys. Well, part of the show was about guys who are kind of somewhat on the spectrum. They have difficulty in reading social cues. They have difficulty in social interactions and presenting in a kind of normal way in a social situation. And I have a lot of sympathy for guys in that situation. I found personally socializing very, very difficult when I was younger. I don't always find it hugely easy now. I'm kind of naturally quite introverted and so on and so forth. But what happens is, over time, through persistence and through just throwing yourself into uncomfortable situations, you learn how to navigate this. And social intelligence, again, we'll talk about the dark triad stuff in another video, but Machiavellianism, okay? Machiavellianism, which we talk about in the Dark Triad, kind of relates to social intelligence in a way. It's like, do you understand the landscape around you? Do you understand, okay, so she's talking to that guy, but is she with him, or does she like him, or is she talking to him in a friendly way, or is there some flirtation there? When you say something to her, how she responded to it? Has she responded badly? Do you know when you need to pull back a bit? So say you make a flirty joke and she doesn't take it very well. Can you pick up on that and then pull back? Or are you a little bit tone deaf and so you carry on and then you get into trouble? And all of these different things. So, and again, a big part of this is awkwardness, because what women hate is feeling awkward. All right. And if you get this wrong, then she can feel awkward when she's with you, and that's going to make her sort of close off and not want to take things further with you, because she wants you to lead. She wants you to be confident, both sexually but just as a man in general. Okay. And so that's what you need to do. And also just understanding the emotional landscape and how all this stuff is meant to fit together is so important. So watching this channel, please subscribe, will help you with that, because this is the stuff we discuss all the time. But as I said, really, over and above that, what you need to be doing is just get out there and get yourself into as many social situations as possible with women that you find attractive, and quite frankly, even women you don't find attractive, and with just people in general. Okay, you need to turn off the computer and get outside and start talking to people. And then all of this stuff is going to improve, okay? And then you're going to be in a much better position. But look, I mean, as I've said, women crave emotion above all else. And the reason that this is so important now, I'm shooting this in 2024, okay, early 2024. This will only continue to be the case, and probably more so as we go on. The reason why this is so important is because when you think about, say, let's focus on money, for example. I mean, looks, as it was Chris Williamson, I was watching a video recently, and he was saying, looks, yeah, everyone likes looks, but in terms of predicting the success of a long-term relationship, they're kind of irrelevant for the most part. It doesn't make any difference, really. So yes, we are a very looks-based society, but that's not going to make a difference in terms of, if she was assessing you as a longer-term partner. The thing with money, and also with status to some extent, is that yes, those things are attractive, but increasingly women have, of course, their own money, right? Women have their own status, because now we don't have this situation anymore where women are reliant on men to be the breadwinner or to be the provider in the same way that used to be the case, okay? And in many cases, you can point at instances where women actually earn more than men. They actually out-earn men. You could argue that there's actually positive discrimination in favor of women now against men in certain areas of society, okay? So women don't need the things that they used to need back in the 1950s or whenever. They don't need the protector so much. They don't need the guy to go out there and look after her. All right. So what are they looking for instead? Well, they're looking for the bells and whistles. They're looking for the fun bits. They're looking for the icing on the cake. The icing on the cake. Now, you could say, yeah, looks is part of the icing on the cake, but emotion is a huge, huge part of it. Because look at the landscape that we inhabit, right? Look at look at our entertainment, TikTok, Instagram Reels, Netflix, streaming services, whatever, right? It's all drama, it's all action with this dopamine addicted society, okay? We're all on our smartphones the same time all the time. It's always this sort of like, oh, what's the new thing? What's the new exciting thing here? What's the new exciting thing? What's the new exciting thing there? As a guy who's entering into her life, particularly if she's a youngish woman in her prime and she's got a lot of options, there's a lot going on. You've got to bring the drama a little bit, and it seems sad to say it, but it's just the reality, right? If you're very flat and you're very placid and quite frankly, you're a bit boring, maybe down the line, maybe when she's 37 and she's looking to cash in her chips and she's thinking, well, Steve from accounts, he was all right. He was earning some good money. Maybe I'll settle on him. Yeah. Okay. Maybe you're in with a chance then. But when she's in her prime, and she wants that excitement, she wants that crazy lifestyle, she wants those good feels, then you need to be providing that emotion in some way. So once again, these are the things that you need to focus on. Look at your hormones. Are your hormones firing on all cylinders? Do you have the oomph to actually go out there and do any of this stuff in the first place? Are you somebody who is challenging? Are you somebody who has some of those bad boy tendencies? If not, you might want to look at that and think about, okay, so I don't want to be a bad guy, but I want to turn the dial up on this stuff. So how can I do that? And there are ways of doing that. Godlike sexual magnetism. Well, at least, you can learn. There's a lot you can learn about sex. There are sex therapists. I personally work with a colleague of mine is a sex therapist that I can put you guys in touch with if you want to do some work on this specifically. I also created content with Tiffany Fox, former adult star, where we talked about this in depth. But look, I mean, you want to be competent and confident sexually, but above all, you want to be not ashamed of your sexuality, okay? You want to be somebody who is, you can just be sexual, you can just present as a sexual person. There's no fear around indicating to her that, yes, you're a man, yes, you think she's attractive, and yes, you are attracted to her. If she rejects you, okay, fine, it's not the end of the world, you're not going to die. But, you know, that is the reality. That's the underlying nature of the situation, okay? And you've got to understand the game, right? From an emotional perspective and from a social perspective. You've got to understand women, you've got to understand men, you've got to understand your own nature, you've got to understand how these things fit together. And if you are covering off all of those things, plus you're also maxing out, or you're doing the best that you can with your looks, with your career, fitness, or, you know, dress sense, fashion, all that kind of thing, you're going to be in a much better position. But the mistake that guys make, okay, and this is the key thing that I want to leave you with. The mistake that guys make is, because we're kind of super logical and we're a bit dorky, guys tend to think it's just this equation where it's like, right, okay, so I get the muscles, I get a nice shirt, I get a watch, I get a car, I get a good job, and then I get the girl. And it's just this fait accompli. And it just doesn't work like that, okay? There needs to be something else, all right? And that's what we try to teach on this channel. And that really is what that is. That's the something else, okay? It's that spark, it's that fire in the eyes, it's that passion, it's that hunger for life, it's that adventurous, risk-taking spirit, okay? If you've got those things, that kind of sexual undertone, if you've got those things, you're going to do very well. In fact, you're going to massively stand out in the current marketplace. If you don't have those things, then even if you've got the other stuff and you've got the external trappings, and even if you're in decent shape, you know, yeah, you're going to win out some of the time, but you're going to lose more than you win, okay? Because it is the emotional side of things, it is the psychology that really makes the difference. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please do subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Hit the notifications bell, give me a like, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye-bye.